Hello, everybody. This is Brian Ankney with Auto Success Magazine. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Today I have two guests, Ryan Gerardi and Ted DuPuy. We are going to be talking about making the most of a trade show. Some of you on this webinar are standing in the aisle looking for products and services to help your dealership do better. When you attend a trade show, trying to find the best speakers to watch and take the best takeaways back to your store to increase your business. Others on this webinar are on the other side of the booth or the aisle. We'll be working in the booths, talking to the dealers, trying to make the case for their products or services. So what we're going to talk about today is from both of those perspectives, what is the best way and what are the things that you should be doing and what are the things you should be looking for to get the most out of your money and time that you spend at a trade show. Before we get started, I'd like to just go over a couple of things. One, we are going to take questions as the webinar goes. Now, there's a couple ways you can ask questions. First, the simplest way is if you are on a desktop or a laptop, you'll have a pane down the right side of your screen that's a GoToWebinar pane, and you can click on the little triangle on the left side of where it says questions near the bottom. It opens up a little window for you to type in your question. Press enter, and it'll come to us. I'll see them, and I'll be able to ask them. Now, if you are a little more bold than that and you would like to interact directly with our all-star panel today, actually, I have an all-star right behind me, Johnny Bench. But if you want to interact directly with our all-star panel, you can raise your hand. And when you raise your hand, I will unmute your microphone, and you can ask your question directly to our all-star panel and interact with them directly as we get to the bottom of your question. Now, one more thing. If you have not joined Auto Success Webinars yet on Facebook, it's a group. Just search Auto Success Webinars, join the group, and you will never miss another webinar. You'll see all of our topics. You can interact with our speakers, and you can suggest future topics or speakers that you would like to have us on the webinar. With that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Ted to kick this thing off.
Hey everyone, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and also Ryan for joining me. And this topic comes from, we just got out of Digital Dealer, and I had the opportunity to present at Digital Dealer about trade shows and about getting the most from a vendor standpoint about how to get the most return on investment for what we spend as vendors at a trade show, regards to pre-show strategies, during the show strategies, and post-show strategies. So I was talking with Ryan, and dealers need to have strategies as well when they go into these shows. And our calendars as vendors are filling up on a daily basis with shows that are just in conferences, not just shows, and conferences as well. And the dealers are too, and they're getting invited to all these. And what's best for a dealer to go to, and what are they going to get out of it? So my background is that I've worked the aisles from behind the booth, from NADA to Digital Dealer, and Ryan and I, we shared a lot of the same turf. We both have history from HomeNet, Automotive from years ago, back when Digital Dealer had where it was born. We both worked from behind a folding. Yeah, both worked from behind a folding table, I'm sure, and shows like Digital Dealer have grown from there. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ryan, and you can tell us a little bit about your background, Ryan.
Well, guys, appreciate you having me, and it's good to see your faces. And I was thinking as you were talking that, Brian, you and I pretty much met at a trade show. I want to say it was probably AAISP, which was pre-Digital Dealer, as Ted pointed out, our early HomeNet days. And Ted, I don't think you and I worked together at HomeNet. I think we crossed different paths, but we also met through an event. Yes. In the last couple of years. So, for me, I've been going to the automotive conferences since 2002 was my first one, NADA in New Orleans. A lot of great memories from that. And I think since then I have maybe missed 3 NADA conventions since 2002. There was about a 2 or 3 year period where I wasn't really hitting the road. But other than that, I've been able to hit the majority of digital dealer conferences, driving sales, a couple JD Powers, and most of the NADA events. And for the most part, for many years, I was always tied to a booth. I remember, it's funny, I remember my first NADA in New Orleans in 2002. The HomeNet booth, we had a 10 by 10 booth, and so at the time did Dealer Skins and Dealer.com, and we were all in the same kind of block in our little 10 by 10 booths. And it's so fascinating to draw back on that and think of, Dealer Skins, they sprouted and then they got acquired pretty quickly. Dealer.com, became, a $1 billion business, and as we know, was eventually acquired as well, but still exists. So I always have that as a reference point. Like I mentioned, AAISP, which I don't even know what it stands for. But you had Ken Lees behind that, I think Mark Dubas and Mike Roscoe. And Roscoe definitely had the aha moment of he knew what he needed to do, and that's what Digital Dealer is today. And coming off the heels of Digital Dealer just last week, it's when you think about the fact that 1,000+ dealers and automotive professionals get together twice a year across the country consistently, it says a lot about that conference. And a lot of others have launched conferences and I think got a feel for what a milestone that really is. And I'll say one thing, a big takeaway is I get a lot of people say, there's nothing new at these conferences. There's not, I'm not seeing anything new. It's the same presenters, same speakers, same exhibitors. But that's because you've been in the business for so long. If you've only been in the business for a year or two, and you go to something like Digital Dealer, it'll blow your mind. I think it's easy to forget how seasoned we are into our space.
Definitely. So with that being said, so you're a dealership and you're going to send some personnel there. And we talked about at the conference on the vendor side, the vendors and we talked about having a pre-show strategy and a show strategy. And we see a lot, as a vendor, I see a lot of the personnel come into, they're wandering. And, well, I need to see this person and I need to see this person. And some, they come with an agenda. No, I got to see this person, I got to see this person, and I'm going to schedule this. They come with a strategy. We talked about this a little bit prior to this webinar. Ryan, what do you think, a dealership based on, their organizational goals of where they're at in their dealership, if their infancy, if they're changing management, whether it's education, deciding which shows to go to, what would be a fundamental, if you will, the basic fundamental of approaching a trade show, as far as the strategy?
It's the right question to ask, and for me, the answer is consistent with a lot of things in life. I think you have to start with your end goal in mind. If you don't define what you want to accomplish and what you're looking to get out of something, then you're actually going into it blind. And so with the conference, it's the same thing. If you're just going there to see what's new, and that's all you're doing, I just want to see something that's new and find something that new, I guess that's better than nothing at all, but it's really, to me, that's not well defined. There's always going to be things new because every company comes out with new things and new ideas and speaking sessions, right? The breakout sessions. There's lots of new ideas in there. So I think you have to be more defined on what it is you want to get out of it. So if I'm a dealer, I'm always disheartened when I hear dealers say, yeah, my dealer won't send me out there. They think it's just a big party and they don't want to spend the money. And that blows me away. I mean, for a dealer to send 1 or 2 people out there, you're talking a few $1,000s tops. I mean, literally tops. Unlike a vendor who's going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars to have a presence there. Literally. For a dealer, I think that the ROI is pretty easy. Not to mention the experience that your staff members will gain as well. So, you know, do you want, as a dealership, do you want to send, you know, your whole dealership out there? No, maybe set up some sort of like a rotation. We did this at HomeNet, actually. When you started at HomeNet, you didn't just immediately go to the trade shows, especially if you were a rookie in the industry. You know, we had, I mean, by the time I had left HomeNet, we had, you know, just about over 50 people. So we couldn't bring more than, you know, maybe a dozen people at the time. So you kind of had to earn your way to get there. But I was always eager to get new staff members to these trade shows because, especially NADA, they would be immersed in so much incredible, you know, content and people, and it would kind of take you out of rookie status, if you will. So I think the same thing for a dealership. Have some end goals in mind. What are some solutions or problems that you're trying to solve, and who are the people that you need to invest into? And send at least 2 or 3 people out there, because, you know, there's going to be some bonding there between those folks, knowledge transfer. So there's that aspect. If they all have clearly defined goals, whether it's, you know, finding vendors for specific solutions, learning about, you know, processes and business systems, maybe finding trainers and consultants, whatever it is, have those defined, get those people out there, and give them a chance to, you know, to unravel those mysteries that need to be unraveled. This business moves so fast. I don't think you can't slow down at all, you know.
You know, Ted, I'd like to comment on what you should do in advance of a trade show. Sure. I've been to trade shows. I have a perspective from 3 different angles. I've been there as someone who worked in a dealership. I've been there as someone who was a vendor, and I've been there, you know, most of my career as somebody who's working with a publication that works with both the dealers and the vendors. And I can tell you from our Auto Success experience, we have 3 people who will walk the floor at NADA to try to visit every booth, and with 3 people, I can't hit every booth. And those are 3 people that don't see a single speaker. They don't go to a single press conference. They are there they might go to a party, but they're there waiting when you're allowed to walk in, and they walk out when they're thrown out. And my 3 people can't visit every booth. And so from a dealer's perspective, if you really need to know who's going to be there, and you really need to have an idea of who you have to see. I agree with that, Ryan. I still think it's cool to have, and I do it myself at a trade show, I try to at least schedule a little bit of time to just walk around and find the things that maybe I didn't know I wanted to see. But if you don't go with a plan, you're just, I mean, especially NADA, I mean, you're not wasting your time, but you're going to truly miss out on some opportunities. I mean, you need to go on the website. They actually have a great little app that lets you plan who you want to see, and it helps you to make appointments. I mean, for NADA, you got to plan it. For some of the smaller trade shows, you can walk the floor. But I definitely think that you're missing out if you don't get the speakers in advance too. Even the smaller trade shows, if you just go see the speakers, like I know I want to see this guy and this girl and this person, a lot of times they only speak twice, and you might miss out on, you know, because of conflicts, you might miss out on somebody you wanted to see. So you got to go. I mean, you're going to spend the money, you're going to go there, you're taking the time, you got to plan it in advance.
Completely, definitely agree, Brian. You can't hit, you know, every breakout session. I'll use, you know, NADA, digital dealer, driving sales. There could be a dozen or 20 sessions going on at the same time, and you can only hit one of them. So yeah, it's not too hard to, you know, pick 3 or 4 a day that you're going to hit, and, you know, do your darndest to get there. And if you're in there for a few minutes and you're not feeling it, you know, I wouldn't be shy. I'd bump out and go to the one that was number 2 on your list. You know,
that's a good idea.
You don't have to sit there and suffer through it if it's not, you know, I think most presenters and speakers, most of them do a pretty good job. But, you know, you might have gone into it with certain needs and expectations, and if it's not hitting you, then bump out and go to plan B for sure.
So with vendors, we have the pre-show strategy, the show strategy, and the post-show strategy, and we've talked about dealerships having them. You know, we addressed pre-show, investigating who you want to see, what you want to see, and then when you get to the show, sticking to it, bumping out if you don't want to. Now let's talk about post-show. what a dealership should do post-show, and it seems like being a week out, usually it's 3 or 4 days away from the dealership. Usually it's key people that are going to the trade show, and just like everybody else, we've been away from our desk for 4 days. And what would be a good strategy for remembering everything that you ascertained, and then acting on that, or making it implementing, I should say, once you get back to the dealership.
That's another good consideration. Hey, before I forget, Brian, what might be good is to maybe ask folks, try to get a feel for how many folks here are dealers versus vendors. I'd be curious to know. Maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's heavy towards one end or another. So maybe if there's a way to have people raise hands or chime in. But Ted, I think for dealer post-show strategy is what you're specifically asked, right? I mean, for starters, getting into a little conference room and all together on who went, and maybe it was a BDC manager and a sales manager and a GM that went, but the principal didn't go, right? Whatever the dynamic is, I think whoever went needs to sit there in the room, with the principal, with the owners, with all the stakeholders, and talk about their experience and go through what they did and what they saw, and just lay it out all on the table. If you've defined your objectives going into it, then you'd be able to identify whether you've reached or stepped towards those objectives on the outset. And then obviously you lay it out on the table, compare that with what you went into it for. Maybe some new things came in that you didn't think about. Maybe some things you thought were a priority, are less of a priority now. And then just re-strategize at that point. Put together your game plan. Okay, well, we've got all this information. What are we going to do with it? Come up with that follow-up plan.
Actually, it looks like we are dead on 50-50 from those that responded, and more than half the people responded. So it's about half and half. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Because for me, these shows, I'm kind of a hybrid, probably a lot like yourself, Brian. I'm not on the vendor side per se or the dealer side. I actually go to these events more to create content, networking, creating content, and I try to learn what I can, but it's hard. I can't carve out all my time to spend in the sessions. I peek at them. I interview the session speakers, but I don't actually go there to necessarily to learn about. I'm not at the dealership, so that's not why I'm there. So I am a hybrid in that sense. But I mean, talk to dealers all the time, and I think the vendor side, I'll let you segue us into that if that's where you're headed, because I think the vendor side, I'm really passionate about the vendor side.
Wait, I had one more comment I wanted to make before we, caveat over to vendors is one thing that I have observed in the sessions is a lot of times the person who is speaking is a vice president or a C-level executive, or there's someone that is higher up in a company that maybe you have an account rep with, or you have a support person with. And I have seen several times where a person will ask, well, why don't we have that? And I think that it is a neat way, if I was a dealer and I had a person who was using whatever product it might be to meet these people that are at a higher level and actually make recommendations to the person that might be able to, actually have those things happen. Like, why doesn't it do this? Well, if you're talking to the CEO, you're probably going to get a little bit more legs behind that request, as opposed to just talking to an account rep.
Brian, did we have any questions leading up to this point?
We have, let's see. Actually, we do not. We do not have any questions right now.
All right. So from a vendor standpoint, we talked about going into the trade show and why we're going to be there based on our organizational needs. And a lot of times we have, like Flick Fusion, we have a big product offering. One of the neat things about Flick Fusion is we have a lot of customers at the trade show. Even though that we have a booth and we're displaying for customers, for dealerships. We are doing so in for our customers. We're there in support for them. So so even though we have a big product offering, it's usually that we go with we're highlighting a specific product and not trying to inundate the dealerships with everything under the sun and, hey, look at us, and inundating the dealership as they're walking down the aisle with everything under the sun. Also engaging the customer with why they're there. And then I'm going to get away from that real quickly because I wanted to really key on this, is the difference between a trade show and a conference. Because a lot of times, even though there are vendor sponsors of conferences, would you say there's a difference between a trade show and a conference, Ryan? You certainly
Yeah.
Digital dealer has been, everybody comes for technology to digital dealer. It's billed that way. Same thing with NADA. It's kind of like a to Z, from how to wash your car to, the latest in technology for a dealership. But some of these other conferences are billed out straight educational. So, and they're billed as a conference versus, so there's a fine line between whether or not the dealer is going to feel like, should they be pitched when they get there, or what's that? So I guess I wanted to touch on that real quick before we get into some of the vendor side of stuff.
Well, I love a lot of the conferences. I've been to most of them. I think from a dealer standpoint, and for everybody, it's a more intimate experience. It could be 50 people there, it could be 100, it could be 300. Typically, everybody's in the same room. So you're together for a good 2 or 3 days. You're together with the same group of people. You definitely make new friends and build your network. I think for the vendors, conferences are ideal. It's a much lower cost to entry. Significantly lower cost, because you minimize your booth costs, minimize your personnel and staff costs. You don't have a lot of the fees that come along with a trade show, and a lot of times at the conferences, meals will be included. Either 1 or 2 meals a day. So I think it's, for a vendor, it's more, there's a better potential ROI there for them, compared to something like driving sales or digital dealer. If you think about digital dealer, even though there's 1,000+ people there, or NADA, which is 20 or 30,000, how many dealers are going to visit your booth in the few days that you're there? It's going to be about the same number as when you go to a small conference. If you go to a conference with 100 or 200 people, that's about how many people you're going to talk to anyway. And so you have a chance to talk to more of these folks. So I think in that sense, conferences are great for the vendors from an ROI standpoint. And then for dealers, it's kind of the same thing. It's a more intimate experience. The speaker's right there, and then he's sitting at a conference table, for the rest of the day, or back at his booth, and you can get a lot more conversation in there. What you don't have at a conference is selection. You get what you get. You get the speakers you get the content that you get. You can leave. I think it's easier at a conference to get distracted with your job. A lot of folks are sitting there on their computer and working away. So what's the attention span there? And that's a challenge that, I think the onus is on the conference to make you want to engage. Otherwise, if I'm not engaged with it, I'm just going to try to get some work done. So it's a whole different experience for sure.
We've got a couple questions, Ted, if you'd like to take them.
Sure.
All right. Should we pick the sessions for our people? For example, BDC topics for BDC people?
I have a good response for that. I'm curious what you're going to say.
Well, let's hear yours first.
So the first thing that comes to mind is you always want to give people autonomy to make their own decisions, right? But you also have the responsibility of accountability. So you want to make sure that they're putting their time to good use. I am all for expanding our horizons. If I'm a BDC manager, I think it's good for me to see things that an F&I director goes through, or a used car manager goes through, or a general manager goes through. I think that's good contrast to have. It could even be better contrast versus going to learn about how to be better in a BDC. So I think it depends on the individual and the dealership's needs and their career path. So, you know, there's definitely no one size fits all, but I think the black and white of it is, don't just let your staff have a free-for-all that they can't account for. That would be a mistake.
I would go with,
oh, go ahead.
You know, spinning off of that, I would take into consideration how new that, let's say you just hired a BDC person and they're looking for direction and you want them to follow a certain path and you have this BDC person in mind, you want your BDC department to be modeled after XYZ. Case, that would be a case. Maybe you have an experienced BDC person. Then it goes back to Ryan's your end goal. What's your end goal? Okay, you have your ideas, I have my ideas of, you know, of course the dealer, hey, whoever's writing the check, it's the golden rule, right? But let's focus on the end goal of, okay, I want this, you know, we have an end goal, we need to sell cars, we need to get this, and we need to get this, and these are the presenters to do so. You know, see who you need to see, let's get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sure.
And a good assignment for someone at that middle manager level to do at these events is to find, you know, good trainers and training companies, you know, as opposed to, you know, having, you know, Automax come out and consult you and pitch you and sell you. You can go to the conference and meet with 3 or 4 different training companies and see them in action and see them in their speaking engagements and make a more educated decision for what you need at the dealership. Not so much learning, oh, I need to learn how to do this and do that. It's more, you know, learning who I can, you know, what my good resources are.
All right. Should we do demos at the show, or should we schedule them later for the whole team?
You know what the vendors are going to say.
It depends upon when you're asking the question. If you're talking to a vendor pre-show, the question's like, hey, we're always going to schedule we're going to schedule them while we're at the show. When you're at the show, we're going to schedule them later. That's how you're always going to answer. That, you know, that's just from experience from a vendor. I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek there. Getting to a trade show or a conference and meeting one-on-one is a good process, because a lot of times a dealer never gets to meet the vendor on a one-on-one basis. With technology as it is today, with you know, sales staffs working remote, a dealership never gets to meet whom they're working with. A trade show is a very good opportunity for a dealership to do so, and to do that in person. To do a demo prior to a trade show goes back to research. You know that goes into hey, is this something that we want to visit when we get to the trade show? So I would highly encourage a dealership to do a presentation prior to the trade show. It doesn't mean they have to commit to anything. It just means, hey, let's get a tailored presentation to our dealership, see if it's our end goal of where we need to get so we can actually meet these folks in person and see if what is presented pre-show matches up with show, so we can execute post-show.
You know, one problem with the idea of doing a demo after the show for both the dealer and the vendor is the drop-off rate. If I'm a dealer and I tell every vendor, yeah, I'm not going to do a demo here, you know, we'll schedule something afterwards. If I hit half of those, I'd be lucky. And same thing from a vendor standpoint. I mean, a vendor would never say, yeah, we don't really want to show you our product. We want to schedule an appointment with you. I mean, that would not work from a vendor standpoint for the same reason, because half the people you schedule if not more, you'll never get the demo with. So in that sense, I don't see why both parties would not want to do it right there in the spot. NADA, it's common to do group demos, right? Every half hour, you start a new demo, you get 3, 4, 6 people sitting there watching it. They can all ask questions.
Right. Actually, we've got a couple more questions. Which events have the best ROI from your experience?
As a dealer or a vendor?
There you go.
Actually, you know what? It did not say. So maybe let's comment on both.
Well, as from a vendor standpoint, and it all boils down to what Ryan talked about in the beginning is relationships, is building those relationships. Some of my strongest relationships were from shows that the I wouldn't say the ROI was through the roof, but it didn't come into play. The ROI didn't come into play. You know, they're just, but for it, and it's hard to tell what your ROI is going to be. This is what I talked about with the vendors. It's so for a vendor, post digital dealer, we got all these leads, got a ton of leads, and we can't forget what each vendor has a specific sales cycle, depending on whether that's 1 day or 6 months. They had a sales funnel going into the trade show that they can't forget. Just because you just got a funnel full of leads and folks that want demos after the show and all this, they can't forget those. So you know, the books will tell you that a post-show strategy, you won't start realizing ROI anywhere from, you shouldn't expect any, for anywhere from 60 to 90 days out before you start realizing the seeds that you had sown, depending on your sales cycle, from a trade show. So you know, one of my best shows was a driving sales, and it wasn't from the show itself. It was from the Gary Mays Learn and Burn, doing the bike ride. You know, it was that was we're sponsoring that this year, by the way. Driving sales. It was the time spent, 3 days, or it was 2 days because it rained one, but it was 2 days spent on a bicycle with I think it was eight other dealers, and you know, 4 hours on a bike.
A lot of bonding there.
A lot of bonding, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and you know, a lot of fun, a lot of, you know, it was relationship building, and getting to know everybody, and in an atmosphere that wasn't high pressure, and that's what I talked about with the vendors. And when you know, that's what I led with. Vendors, you know, dealers are like, oh, they're just waiting for us, and it's no. From a vendor standpoint, vendors are very uneasy in a trade show. I don't know too many vendors that feel at ease or like at home, like they walk into a trade show and they see all the lights and go, yes, this is my house. I'm one of the few that I like being put on a fish tank, putting in a fish tank, and have like 300 dealers coming at me going, what do you do? I like that. That's me. But you take a lot of salespeople out there that are comfortable behind their desk or behind a phone or one-on-one. That's not them. And so they're out of their comfort zone. Dealers are out of their comfort zone, because when dealers go to digital dealer looking for something with a strategy, hey, we need to, for lack of anything else, we need to get a video platform. You know, so they're going from booth to booth in buy mode. Dealers don't like to be in buy mode, so the defenses are up as well. So,
and I'll chime in there, if you will. Yeah, the idea of return on investment in and of itself is, I would say it's an evasive idea, because to measure ROI, you have to define what you're measuring and how you're measuring that. So, and something like an event, I would break it into two. You have the hard ROI that is black and white measurable, but then you have the soft ROI, which are those intrinsic things that you just can't measure. So, the bike ride that you mentioned with the 8 guys, you can't measure the investment and the return on that, but you know that it was time well spent. And time and money are essentially the same thing. And you don't attribute that to sales. You wouldn't go back if one of those guys signed up within a year and say, oh, well, that show paid for itself because that guy signed up. I mean, you could. That would be a hard measurement, but that's not why you did the bike ride. That's right. You did the bike ride because, it was a time investment. So, yeah, depending on your product, depending on your investment, and your sales cycle, all those things are going to factor into how you measure your ROI. I already stated earlier, from a dealer standpoint, I don't see how you can't get a good return on your investment because you're not spending that much money for your staff to be there. Send 2 or 3 folks, set a budget, let them have a good time. That's part of it. Let everybody have a good time. Don't make them eat fast food and, Subway the whole time. Let them have some nice dinners. And unfortunately for dealers, they don't have to do a lot of the spending. Vendors are more than happy to take dealers out for drinks and for dinner. So you don't need a big meal budget on the dealer side. But for a vendor, ROI is difficult. If you say, look, we need to account for X number of sales within 90 days to feel that we got an ROI, you need to know that going in, and you need to make sure you get that going out. And I think most products have no problem achieving some level of ROI. Case in point, going back to HomeNet, our main product was $250 a month, right? So if we're dropping,
right,
$100,000 on an event, how many sales do we have to make? We have to make an awful lot of sales, but we have to make one, enterprise, relationship. But those relationships take months to a year to form. So it's hard to get a hard measurement there. But for the most part, I think when I do the math of what a vendor's spending to be there, if they go in with a strategy and follow up, right? If you just go in and do your thing and then don't stick your sales team and do all that follow up, I don't think you can justify your ROI if you don't follow up. But I think as long as you're diligent about it and have a strategy, I think for the most part vendors can do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep going back and doing it. Their businesses are growing, and if they're at these events, they've got everything dialed in. It's not the events that are making them a success, but the events definitely aren't hindering their ability to succeed. And just to add to that, for folks that might be thinking about exhibiting for the first time, conferences are a safer bet. The smaller conferences are a much safer bet. Doing digital dealer, NADA that's a tough nut to crack. You probably got to get on a waiting list. But digital dealer, driving sales, the two kind of, I think, bigger ones in the digital space. If you think you're going to go and try it out one time and see if you get a good ROI, you're probably going to feel like you didn't. I think you have to be committed that this is a direction we want to invest in towards on an annual basis, and you need to be there year after year. I don't think you have to do digital dealer twice a year. I think that comes down to, whether you have that budget, because if you can, then great. But I don't think you can go try digital dealer out and then, go push the pencil in the background and say, hey, it wasn't a win, because I think you got to be committed to it for a few years.
Yeah, and one thing too, and Ryan, you probably remember this. My wife always likes to share this story about walking around with all the HomeNet guys and introducing them to all my friends at a couple of trade shows. If you can make some relationships with other vendors, or with somebody like yourself now, or me, or if you can make some relationships with people that already have a lot of relationships at a trade show, it might make sense for one of your people to walk around with a partner that you already have and just meet all the people that person knows, because that's one of the things where there's a lot of value. And like you said, you're not going to go to the trade show and meet everybody the first time, but maybe if you had somebody to help you and to leverage a relationship like that, you could make that happen a lot quicker.
The relationships, the networking, it's that intrinsic soft ROI that is undeniable. When I go to these events, I mean, it's been 15, 16 years, it's like family. You know, you can't walk down the hall without getting sucked into a conversation with somebody that, you know, I mean, Ted plucked me out of the VIP party on the rooftop of Paris. I'm like, how the hell did you see me? You just, you know, you do. So yeah, vendors especially, everybody, it is about the relationships. And not to mention, you don't know who's going to go from dealer to vendor. So if you're a vendor and all you want to do is sell to a dealer and you're not focused on that bonding and the relationship, that there's no long-term, you know, value there. You don't know where that person's going to be, and you don't know where you're going to be 2, 3, or 5 years from now. And we see it all the time. You know,
oh, yeah.
we see, you know, people bounce from vendor to vendor. Most people don't go from the vendor side to the dealer side. It happens, but I think it's more the other way around. Dealers, you know, moving into that vendor side. So that was one of the hardest lessons, I think, in my career that took me years to kind of realize, is that it's about the relationships. That's why we do all this. That's what's important.
And I think to lend back to what Ryan said, it reminds me of that the old adage between the CFO and the CEO about investing in your employees. From a dealership standpoint, what if we invest in this person and he leaves? What if we don't and he stays? You know, yeah. It's about, you know, the ROI for a dealership. When I talk to some dealers, you know, I'm like, hey, come on, you're going to spill more in a weekend. At Vegas, you know, some of the money that gets thrown around in a dealership, sending some of your key staff to get educated, they're gonna, it's a value proposition for them. You know, they're gonna take it as, you know, they're gonna take it on their shoulders, going, oh, wait a minute, you know, the dealer really is looking to me to lead the way.
What you started off with, to me, is critical. If you're not investing into your employees, you will lose them. If you invest into your employees, you know, then you have a better chance of keeping them. And even if they move on and grow beyond you, at least at least the return is coming back because you've invested into them. So, as I say, from a dealer standpoint, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer to me. Send the people that are worth investing into, and I wouldn't get attached to, you know, what if they move beyond me kind of thing. I would never want to work for a company that thought that way.
And, you know, yeah. I recently heard a podcast by a retired admiral, and he said that, you know, with millennials, which millennials are now the largest group in our workforce in the United States, that within the U.S. military, that a lot of them, they change their positions every 2 years because that's the way they look at it. That's the way they look at their job. That's the way they look at their career. They don't want to do the same thing forever. They want to move around. They want to be advanced, and they want a person that's their manager or boss that's investing in them and educating them and preparing them for that next level. And what better way than send them to a trade show where they're going to get a whole bunch of new ideas and want to go back to the dealership and make changes.
And I think you keyed on it right there, is making changes. And I think where a dealership could not recognize the ROI is not executing what you just invested in your employee. Is when they come back and you're looking to them, okay, you just learned a bunch, now go. And I'm, okay, I learned how to do this, 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 and this, and we need to do this, this, and this. No, we can't do any of that. Just go sell cars. Sound familiar?
Just go beat your head.
Yeah.
Go beat your head against the board.
You know, Joe Webb does it best. Just go sell cars. Just get them in. I just spent $3,000 on you. Just get them in. You know, no, but we can't do it that way anymore. Well, that doesn't make sense. I don't know what they were teaching you over there, but just get them in. You know, that's where your ROI is going to go through the roof. The dealership has to be open to experiencing that return on investment by having, you know, having things change. You know, obviously you're sending that, you know, your dealership sending folks to a trade show or a conference to move with the industry, to move with the millennials, move with the marketing, you know, and to remember the fundamentals that are, you know, because we do, you know, it's about remembering the fundamentals. There's a lot of stuff out there, but we do sometimes forget the fundamentals of, you know, the ABCs. These conferences are good ways to kind of rope everybody back in and go, wait a minute, we're still here to sell cars. It's not all about the SEO, the SEM, and everything else. Wait a minute, we still have to put pictures up on the website. Oh, okay, that helps. So, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we have one more question right now. It's do giveaways work to drive traffic to your booth?
I love that. I love that question.
They depending on what those giveaways were. What did Dealer On have this year? What was Dealer On giving? What did Dealer On have? What did they have?
I'm not sure.
Elena was talking about. Elena was talking. I didn't make it past the Dealer On booth, but Elena was talking about it.
Was it a trip?
No, it was.
I don't remember.
It was a stuffed animal, I thought. But
whoever asked that question, I think I love the question, because it's kind of like, if you think about it in all sorts of retail, if you're incentivizing people to just come by and enter for a prize, I think you're playing a numbers game at that point. You're not necessarily bringing in the right people for the right reason, right? So how will it, you know, will it help generate buzz to your booth? Sure, it depends on the prize. But I think more importantly is incentivize people maybe to take action and do business with you. In my opinion, I think that's a more practical way to go. So for instance, maybe whether you want to incentivize people to come visit your booth, sure, but focus more on just getting people there that you want there, and then get that connection with them, and then incentivize them to either commit to buying now, especially at NADA, because you have the decision makers, they can make that commitment, whereas other trade shows, the people there can't necessarily just make that decision, but you can incentivize them to buy within a certain period of time. Because you came here to our booth and spent time with us, you know, let's set up a meeting and we'll follow up with you. And as long as you guys agree to, you know, to come on board by this time, we'll give you this incentive. We'll give you this incentive to do so. I think that's a more realistic way to look at incentivizing.
We actually had one of our guests said that Dealer On gave a cash giveaway for people that would sit down and do a demo.
Oh, I didn't think it was that. So, but based on the topic of giveaways versus, we're just gonna let's group it into swag, because a lot of vendors, and we're going to speak to the vendors, and about swag, and this ties back into product offering. When you go to a trade show as a vendor, you want your booth to become to be a destination, and this ties back into the pre-show strategy of email blasts and marketing and telling people what to expect when they visit your booth, as far as the product offerings that you have, maybe from A to Z, but we're going to focus on Q. And Q is what we're going to promote at this trade show, and everything around Q. And if that doesn't, you know, you want the folks to stop by the booth and figure out what Q is. So you want your booth to be a destination based on that. The swag that everybody collects, if not during the show, the last day everybody has their bag full of swag, and vendors and dealers, they all do it. They circle around who has the coolest and neatest stuff with the swag. It's about getting them to come, and we're not trying to demean the dealers and go, oh, they'll come over for a ball, a bouncy ball. That's it. It's you know, at Flick Fusion, we try to think of something useful, practical, that they're actually going to use. I've done something in the past that is a little politically incorrect, but I brand lighters. Smokers are in the auto industry. Smokers like lighters, They use them 20 times a day, if not more. It's more that they're going to pull that out more than they're going to pull out a business card. We also do backpacks, camera bags. You know, those get utilized a lot, and we run out every trade show and every conference that we do. And
love these. These are one of my favorite giveaways. And no one at Digital Dealer gave these away.
Sitting on our desk. Exactly. We all have something sitting on our desk. And we all, and every booth that we went to was a destination to pick that up. And going, oh, cool. This is, yeah, I could use this. And one of my favorite stories was we were working at, when I was at HomeNet, we had these static balls. We took these, you remember you touch it and the little electricity goes to the end of the ball.
Yeah.
And I think everybody knows Brian Riddell. He came by, and he's like, oh, I want one of these for my kid. I gave him a box. I get an email from North Dakota. The box was empty when he got home. The kid was very disappointed. So somebody from HomeNet, you know, I emailed HomeNet, and on all the it was very popular. We're like, everybody was out. So one of the support people from HomeNet took it off their desk, shipped it to him. Brian and I have been tight ever since, and I mean, that's one of those relationship things. It wasn't about, I'm pretty sure the globe is gone at this point. Kids outgrown it, whatever, the battery's dead. But you know, just case in point, and obviously that's the exception to the rule, but the swag is part of
it. Is, I think, if anything, swag has value, and it has lasting value. People want it. Come up with cool stuff that people are going to use. You know what the best piece of swag was? Was from Tim James. When we were at HomeNet, he wanted to do mouse pads. And this was like mid-2000s, which is funny to look back because all of us were like, no one uses a mouse pad anymore. And he pushed. He's like, nope, people use mouse pads, and HomeNet's going to be right there. And you know, I was really opposed to the idea, but I'm like, all right, it's your show, you do your thing. He had these mouse pads made, and they were a hit. They were a hit. I don't know if he still makes them, but I would see them when I go into dealerships and see the mouse pads there.
Every year we would change the
design.
Crazy. We would change the design every year, so it was a destination. So people, with knowing that every digital dealer we were going to have a new design on the new mouse pad. And to this day, we can walk into dealerships and we'll still see the mouse pad.
She does.
You know.
Yeah.
On
it was
the
brilliant.
desk.
Wow.
So.
Well, it's a good question. So there's swag, and then there's incentivizing. And you know, like I said, I think if you're paying people to do demos, whatever that is, I mean, you might get people doing demos for the wrong reason. Dealers United used to do the massages, and you could get a free massage, and you have to sit there and do the demo. They don't do it anymore, but again, same deal. I'll watch a demo of anything for a 15-minute shoulder rub. I'll watch whatever you tell me. It doesn't make me a buyer.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, good stuff. We get through all the questions?
Yep, that's the last question we have right now. Everybody that's on the call right now, if you'd like to ask another question, please do so sooner than later, because that's the last question we have right now. Ted, are there any other topics you'd like to cover, or anything else you'd like to leave with our audience before we let them go for the day?
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Ryan, I think we hit about all the topics that we wanted to. It wasn't in consecutive order, but I think we nailed about everything that we were talking about pre-show. So I think we hit our strategy. So
good.
Anything.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me up here, and again, everyone that's still here, thanks for tuning in. And you know how to. I guess everyone knows how to reach us if they need us for anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you guys have a question or anything, you'll all get an email from me thanking you for coming. And even though that is an automated email, it is from my real email address. So if you reply and you want to get in contact with Ryan or Ted, just reply to me, and I'll make sure to get you all their contact information. Thank you all for coming. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
You want us to hang on for a minute while you shut down?
Sure.
I just stopped recording. We only have one attendee she's still on. But yeah, I have the recording. It'll probably take about an hour for it to, fully process. Go to webinar. For some reason, it takes a little bit of time to process. Do you guys want MP4s or links?
Here, I'll tell you what. Hold on. Okay, I was able to dismiss Molly. Molly, by the way, do you guys know Molly Curry?
Mm-hmm.
She was who's happening?
Yeah, she's with. Who's she with? She's with Dealer Socket, isn't she?
No, she recently. I forget where she came from, but she recently launched Vendor DB Auto. She's basically working on procuring a good vendor database. Brian, I don't know if you know this. You and I had a conversation. I think at Digital Dealer or Driving Sales last fall. I think it might have been at NADA this year. Now that I think about it, and you've been doing webinars for what, 2 or 3 years now, pretty consistently.
Yep.
And you know what? We get a lot of. I was always getting people asking us, do you guys do webinars? Do you do webinars? And I was always like, no. There's plenty of webinars out there. You can go to Auto Success. You can go to Dealer On, Auto News. You name it. Everyone's doing webinars. Digital Dealer. But people were always asking us if we do webinars. So you had said something. You're like, yeah, I'm going to jack the price up to like $3,000 a webinar. And we didn't really get that deep into it, but I'm like, well, maybe it's something I should look into. So I did. I started doing webinars for Dealer Refresh. We do a few different types, but one of them is for vendors. It's like it's less about the webinar. It's more about content creation. But all of the webinars I do, what I do is I take the recording and I dub it down.
I'll be back.
Okay. I dub it down. I trim it up because you get a lot of extra stuff in the recording that you don't need. So I trim it up, and then in most cases I try to make a mini trailer version of it. So if you take today's was almost an hour long. So if I packed it into a 4 to a 6 minute video, right? All the best key talking points, like bing, bing, bing. It moves pretty well. And then what I do is I build a marketing campaign around that video. And one thing I do, I'm trying to be more diligent about is, we have the forums, the Dealer Refresh forums. And I now create a discussion thread around each webinar. And so that way, we have a place where we can take this conversation and, over the next year, I can continue to keep that conversation and the video, in front of people and keep that ongoing conversation. So maybe that's something you guys want to utilize. We have, can I share my screen?
Yeah, I can give you that. Here.
You have to do it? All right.
I could just give it to you.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, so let me show you something. If you go to forums, I'm about to add a couple today. So a couple of things. There is a section down here specifically for webinars. See here?
Okay.
And it gets tagged as a webinar. I like to put the date on it, at least when I'm promoting it. I like to put the date when I'm promoting it. If you announce your webinars in here, then we will share that and promote it through email and social media on Dealer Refresh. And then you always have a point of conversation. And then when you get the video, you can link, you can link to the video. It's possible you and I could work something out where I'm, actually helping do that video sequence I was talking about. So that's an idea too. And then something else, because I think you do the same thing, you have these vendors, is the myth of selling cars. What? Okay, here. I didn't do a great job with this. So how many vendors do you need? Blah, blah, blah. This was actually a webinar promotion. I don't know why I didn't mark it that way. And what I'm asking the vendors to do that do these campaigns is to come up with a special offer for Dealer Refresh, members, and have a special offer like, 1 month free or 3 months at a discounted price, whatever that is. Then we have this new section called Deals for Dealers. See here, Deals for Dealers. And what I can do is I can create a deal and associate it. So I can use the webinar to promote the deal, and then I can promote this deal through the forum. And this, they screwed something up, but this links to the sign up page for it. So that's something else we started doing. So I just want to throw these ideas out to you if you want to kind of maybe find ways to work together, because
sure.
I have a whole process for mine, and this is some of the nuts and bolts to it, but the forum's a great place to drive people.
Yeah, let me play with that a little bit, and then you and I should probably talk again before I show it to our team. I went from having one boss to a whole team of bosses who have bosses, and so I want to make sure I have my pitch right before I go to them.
Yeah, I forgot you guys got acquired. I forgot about that.
Yeah, although all of the good thing is I don't know that I've ever been or heard of an acquisition with a more welcoming group of bosses. I mean, our website, our newsletter. I mean, everything has been great with them so far. They just give us whatever we want. But I mean, like, I don't know if you probably saw Auto Success Service that I tried to do last year. Got 3 issues out digitally. We got bought April 1st, and we had our first printed version of Dealer Service in August. I mean, like, we got a new website in 60 days, a new newsletter in less than 70 days, and a new magazine in like 90 days. I mean, they literally have the team and the people and the money to do whatever. Like, all of our dreams are coming true. But they're very big about keeping most things in house. So I'd have to come up with the right way to present this without. They also dismiss my ideas sometimes quickly. So I got to pitch it right, But I do like the idea of the forum, because I have nothing like that. I put them up on our Auto Success webinars group on Facebook, which I think groups on Facebook are dying. I think that's dying. I think groups are going to be something of the past here pretty soon. They're not as effective as they once were.
The challenge with Facebook groups is that the communication has a really short lifespan. I mean, literally, you're looking at typically at most a few days of activity, and then it's gone, and everyone's moved on.
Yeah.
With the forums here, Google constantly drives traffic back to these forums. So I think in your case, like I said, there's nothing prohibiting you from coming here and starting a discussion and putting it in the right place, which is in the webinars. See, I have it in the wrong place. That's why this one's showing up funny. But putting it in the webinars group and marking it as a webinar. I mean, like I said, there's nothing prohibiting from promoting the webinar into the forum, and then you always have a place to drive people around the conversation if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I date them, and what I think I need to do is after I do it, I need to remove the date, because they're not as, I only want the date there when I'm promoting it, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, have at it. And same thing, Ted,
okay.
And both of you guys, this is the industry news section here. And so as long as it's not webinars, to me, I say, as long as your content's not self-serving and self-promotional, then come in here and share it. Webinars are the exception to that rule. Come and promote the webinars because it's educational for the most part, and people can make their own decision. But, you can come in here to industry news and, put up articles and content that is, you think's relevant to the community. And like I said, we put things out here. We push this stuff out there. So have at it, man. Like, get in there.
Cool.
Because anything you put in the forums, we talk about on our our Facebook Live broadcast, and we talk about it on our podcast and in webinars too.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
All right, boys.
I'll put one up there on my next one.
Yeah, that'd be good. We'll get it out there. Ted, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it, man. It was very kind of you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, let me see what you cut it down to. We were on there for 54 minutes. We should have at least 12 minutes of content.
I agree.
Hey,
There's some
Ted,
good stuff in there.
The 10th is the only day I can't do next month.
Well, that leaves it wide open. Thanks, Brian. I'll get a hold of the 9th.
No, the 10th is the only day I can't do. I can do every day but the 10th.
Every day but the 10th. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do an Matt Koenig. You going to be a rock star, Ryan?
Yeah, I will be.
No, I will not.
I got to start. I got to start promoting it.
So yeah, I got to find out when he wants to. I'm going to have Matt Koenig. We're going to be talking about Rockstar Auto Conference on the next one. So.
All right.
I think it's Rockstar Auto Conference, or we're going to be talking about something, but I'm not sure. So I got to get with Matt. So
cool. Check with him and then let me know. That I'll save your day.
Thanks you very much.
Hey, boys.
Brian, thanks for saving my ass and giving me content.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. Anytime.
All right, man.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Later, guys. See ya.